Welcome back. I'm glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've had a long day, or maybe you're the kind of person who likes falling asleep to quiet thoughts and gentle stories, rather than counting sheep. You've got nothing to do but rest. Let your mind relax, your breathing slow, and your body grow light. Let's start. There's a moment early in Red Dead Redemption 2 that tells you everything you need to know about Arthur Morgan. The gang is freezing in the mountains, desperate and starving after a botched robbery in Blackwater. Dutch needs someone to ride out into the blizzard, to find food, to scout for shelter, to do whatever needs doing so the others can survive. He doesn't ask for volunteers. He doesn't need to. Arthur is already saddling his horse. This is who Arthur Morgan is, the man who steps up. The man who does what needs to be done, the man everyone turns to when things go wrong, not because he's the leader, that's Dutch's role, but because he's the one they can rely on. Arthur Morgan is the rock of the Van der Linde gang, and understanding why requires understanding something that modern culture often struggles with: what it actually means to be a man. Red Dead Redemption 2 is, among many things, a meditation on masculinity. Not the shallow, performative masculinity of action movie heroes, or the toxic caricature that dominates contemporary discourse, but something deeper and more nuanced. Arthur Morgan embodies a vision of manhood that is simultaneously traditional and subversive, strong and vulnerable, violent and tender. He is a man in the fullest sense of the word, and his journey through the game is a journey toward understanding what that means. Let's start with the obvious. Arthur Morgan is physically imposing. He's broad-shouldered, weathered, capable of tremendous violence. He can clear a room of armed men, break a man's jaw with a single punch, survive wounds that would kill lesser men. In the world of 1899, where physical strength still matters, where the frontier hasn't yet been fully tamed, Arthur's physical capabilities are essential to his survival and the survival of those he protects. But physical strength alone doesn't make a man. The game is full of physically strong characters who are clearly not meant to be admired. Micah Bell is dangerous, capable, a skilled gunfighter. He's also a coward, a manipulator, a man without honour or loyalty. Bill Williamson is strong but stupid, easily led, prone to cruelty when he feels insecure. The O'Driscoll gang members are tough frontier outlaws, and they're portrayed as little better than animals. Physical strength without moral direction is just brutality. What distinguishes Arthur is how he uses his strength. He uses it in service of others. When Sadie Adler needs rescue from the O'Driscolls, Arthur goes. When John Marston needs saving from wolves, Arthur goes. When the camp needs meat, when someone needs protection, when a job needs doing that might get someone killed, Arthur goes. His strength is not for himself, it's for the people who depend on him. This is the first principle of Arthur's masculinity. Strength exists to protect the weak. A man who uses his power only for his own benefit is not a man at all. He's a predator. Arthur understands this instinctively, even if he couldn't articulate it. When he encounters vulnerable people, the widow Charlotte Balfour, the veteran Hamish Sinclair, the various strangers who need help throughout the game, his first impulse is to assist, not to exploit. His strength creates obligation, not entitlement. The contrast with Dutch van der Linde is instructive here. Dutch talks constantly about helping people, about fighting against the encroaching civilization that crushes the weak. But Dutch's actions increasingly serve Dutch. His grand plans, his schemes, his dreams of Tahiti, they're about Dutch's vision. Dutch's legacy, Dutch's escape. The people who follow him are means to his ends, even if he can't admit that to himself. Dutch uses the language of protection while practicing exploitation. Arthur sees this eventually. It takes him most of the game to fully recognise what Dutch has become, because loyalty, another cornerstone of Arthur's masculinity, makes him slow to condemn the man who raised him. But Arthur's loyalty is not blind obedience. True loyalty, as Arthur comes to understand, means wanting what's best for those you love, even when they don't want it themselves. Sometimes loyalty means saying no. Sometimes it means walking away. Sometimes it means standing against the person you've followed your whole life. The evolution of Arthur's relationship with Dutch is the spine of Red Dead Redemption 2's narrative, and it's fundamentally a story about what men owe each other. Dutch saved Arthur from the streets, gave him purpose, taught him to read, made him part of a family. Arthur owes Dutch everything. But does that debt require Arthur to follow Dutch into destruction? Does loyalty to a man supersede loyalty to principles? When Dutch abandons Arthur on the oil refinery, when he leaves John to die, when he sacrifices the gang's well-being for his own pride, at what point does loyalty become complicity? Arthur's answer, arrived at through tremendous struggle, is that loyalty must be ordered toward the good. You can't be loyal to evil. You can't follow someone into damnation and call it virtue. A man must be loyal to what matters, to people, to principles, to the genuine well-being of those he loves, not to the whims of a leader who has lost his way. This is a mature understanding of loyalty, one that recognizes the difference between faithfulness and civility. The theme of loyalty connects to another aspect of Arthur's masculinity, his role as protector and provider. Throughout the game, Arthur functions as the gang's primary breadwinner. He hunts for food, he brings in money from jobs, he donates to the camp fund, he ensures that the people depending on him have what they need. This isn't glamorous work, it's not the stuff of legends, but it's essential, and Arthur does it without complaint. There's something deeply traditional about this aspect of Arthur's character. He embodies the provider role that men have occupied throughout human history. The hunter who brings back meat, the worker who earns wages, the protector who stands between his family and danger. Modern discourse often dismisses these roles as outdated or oppressive, but Red Dead Redemption 2 presents them as meaningful, even noble. Arthur finds purpose in providing for others. His contributions to the camp aren't just mechanical gameplay elements. They're expressions of his character, his values, his understanding of what it means to be part of a community. The camp system reinforces this thematically. When Arthur donates money or supplies, gang members thank him. When the camp is well stocked, morale improves. When Arthur neglects his responsibilities, people notice and comment. The game creates a feedback loop that makes providing feel meaningful, that connects Arthur's actions to the well-being of people he cares about. This isn't about ego or recognition. Arthur deflects praise consistently, but about the satisfaction of knowing that your efforts matter, that the people depending on you are taken care of. Contrast this with characters who fail to provide. Uncle is the obvious example, a man who contributes nothing, who takes without giving, who exists as a parasite on the gang's resources. Arthur's contempt for Uncle isn't about laziness per se, it's about the violation of the social contract that holds the gang together. Everyone is supposed to contribute according to their abilities. Uncle has abilities. He's not incapable, but he chooses not to use them. He takes the benefits of community without accepting its obligations. In Arthur's eyes, this makes Uncle less than a man. The provider role connects to another dimension of Arthur's masculinity, his capacity for self-sacrifice. A man who provides for others necessarily puts their needs before his own. He eats last, sleeps least, takes the dangerous job so others don't have to. Arthur does all of this without fanfare, without expecting gratitude, without keeping score. His self-sacrifice is so consistent, so unremarkable to him, that it's easy to miss. But it's there in every mission where Arthur takes point, every firefight where he draws enemy attention, every moment where he puts himself between danger and the people he's protecting. The ultimate expression of this self-sacrifice comes at the end of the game, when Arthur gives his life to ensure Jon's escape. By this point, Arthur knows he's dying. The tuberculosis has taken too much. He has weeks at most. He could spend those weeks trying to survive, trying to squeeze out a few more days of life. Instead, he spends them ensuring that Jon, Abigail and Jack have a chance at the future he'll never see. His final act is pure self-gift. Strength used entirely in service of others, masculinity expressed as sacrifice. But Arthur's masculinity isn't only about strength and sacrifice, it's also about vulnerability, about the capacity to feel deeply and to acknowledge those feelings. This is where Red Dead Redemption 2 subverts expectations about what masculine characters can be. Arthur Morgan is tough, yes, he's capable of tremendous violence, but he's also capable of tremendous tenderness, and the game doesn't treat these as contradictions. Arthur's journal is the primary window into his inner life, and what we find there is a man of surprising sensitivity. He draws the landscapes he encounters, the animals he hunts, the people he meets. He reflects on his choices, his regrets, his hopes. He writes about love and loss, about beauty and meaning, about the big questions that most video game protagonists never consider. The journal reveals Arthur as a thoughtful, introspective person, not the simple brute his exterior might suggest. This vulnerability extends to his relationships. Arthur's interactions with Mary Linton show a man still wounded by lost love, still hoping despite himself, still capable of being hurt by rejection. His conversations with the Reverend Swanson and Sister Calderon reveal spiritual searching, a desire for meaning that his outlaw life has never satisfied. His care for Jack Marston, taking the boy fishing, protecting him from the violence of gang life, shows paternal instincts that his own lost son awakened and that never fully died. The game doesn't treat Arthur's vulnerability as weakness, it treats it as depth. A man who feels nothing is not strong. He's empty. A man who can be hurt, who can love, who can grieve. That man has something worth protecting, something worth fighting for. Arthur's emotional capacity is what makes his strength meaningful. He fights because he cares, protects because he loves, sacrifices because the people he's sacrificing for matter to him. Without vulnerability, his actions would be mechanical, meaningless. The integration of strength and vulnerability is perhaps the most important aspect of Arthur's masculinity. Contemporary culture often presents these as opposites. You can be tough or you can be sensitive, but not both. Arthur proves this false. He is the toughest man in the Van der Linde gang, and also the most emotionally available. He can kill 12 men in a gunfight, and then sit quietly by a campfire. sketching the sunset and reflecting on mortality. These aren't contradictions, they're complements. True strength includes the strength to feel. The theme of mortality runs throughout Arthur's story and connects to his masculinity in important ways. A man must know that he is mortal, must be prepared for the end. Arthur understands this from the beginning. He's an outlaw, after all, living a life where death could come any day. But understanding mortality abstractly is different from facing it concretely, and Arthur's tuberculosis diagnosis forces him to confront death in a way he never has before. What's remarkable about Arthur's response to his diagnosis is how it clarifies rather than destroys him. Many people facing death become selfish, grasping, desperate to squeeze out whatever pleasure remains. Arthur goes the opposite direction. Knowing his time is short, he becomes more focused on what matters, more determined to do good with whatever days remain. His mortality doesn't diminish him, it refines him. The knowledge of death burns away the inessential and leaves only what's real. This is a profoundly masculine response to mortality, in the classical sense. The Stoics wrote about meditating on death as a way to live more fully, to appreciate what matters, to act with urgency and purpose. Arthur, without having read the Stoics, arrives at the same wisdom. His dying months are his best months, not despite his illness, but because of it. The shadow of death illuminates the path he should have been walking all along. Arthur's relationship with death also connects to his capacity for violence. He's a killer, there's no getting around that. The body count Arthur accumulates over the course of the game is staggering. How do we reconcile this with the portrait of masculine virtue I've been painting? How can a man who kills so freely be held up as an example of anything good? The answer lies in context and intention. Arthur lives in a violent world, a world where the rule of law is tenuous and where survival often requires the willingness to fight. He didn't choose this world. He was born into it, raised in it, shaped by it. Within this world, violence is sometimes necessary to protect the innocent, to defend against aggressors, to survive. Arthur's violence is not random or sadistic. It's instrumental, directed toward goals that are often, though not always, defensible. This doesn't make Arthur innocent. He knows he's done terrible things and he doesn't excuse himself. We're bad men, he tells John early in the game, but we ain't them. There's a hierarchy of badness, a recognition that even among outlaws there are lines that shouldn't be crossed. Arthur tries to stay on the right side of those lines, even as he acknowledges that he's crossed plenty of others. His moral self-awareness is part of what makes him sympathetic. He doesn't pretend to be better than he is. The game also shows Arthur's violence taking a toll on him. He's not a psychopath who enjoys killing. He's a man doing what he believes he must, and it wears on him. His journal entries reveal guilt, regret, weariness with the endless cycle of robbery and murder. By the end of the game, Arthur is tired of running, tired of fighting, tired of being the man everyone turns to when violence is needed. His final choice to help John escape rather than fight for money reflects this exhaustion. He's done enough killing. He wants his last acts to be acts of love. The question of violence connects to broader questions about masculinity and morality. Is violence ever justified? Can a violent man be a good man? Red Dead Redemption 2 doesn't offer easy answers, but it suggests that the capacity for violence, properly directed and properly restrained, is part of what makes protection possible. A man who cannot fight cannot protect. A man who will not fight when fighting is necessary fails those who depend on him. The key is direction and restraint, violence in service of the good, controlled by moral judgment, never enjoyed for its own sake. Arthur's restraint is as important as his capacity. He doesn't seek fights, they come to him. He doesn't escalate when de-escalation is possible. He shows mercy when mercy is warranted, sparing enemies who surrender, helping people who've wronged him, refusing to take revenge even when revenge would be satisfying. The high honour Arthur that most players experience is a man who uses violence reluctantly as a last resort, and who feels the weight of every life he takes. This brings us to another crucial aspect of Arthur's masculinity, his moral code. A man must have a code, a set of principles that guide his actions and define his character. Arthur's code is never fully articulated, he's not a philosopher, but it's visible in his choices. Don't hurt people who don't deserve it. Don't steal from those who can't afford to lose. Protect women and children. Keep your word. Stand by your friends. These principles aren't original or sophisticated, but they're real, and Arthur tries to live by them. The importance of having a code lies in what it provides: consistency, predictability, integrity. A man with a code can be trusted because his behaviour follows patterns. You know what he'll do in a given situation because you know what he believes. Arthur's code makes him reliable in a world full of unreliable people. The gang trusts him because they know he won't betray them, won't abandon them, won't put his interests above theirs. His code is the foundation of his relationships, but a code isn't enough by itself. A man must also be willing to revise his code when it proves inadequate. This is one of Arthur's most important developments over the course of the game. His original code placed loyalty to Dutch above almost everything else. Dutch saved him, raised him, gave him purpose. Arthur owed Dutch his life and his allegiance. But as Dutch's behaviour becomes increasingly erratic, increasingly selfish, increasingly destructive, Arthur has to ask whether his code is serving the good or enabling evil. The answer he arrives at is that loyalty to a person cannot override loyalty to principles. You can't follow someone into damnation and call it virtue. When Dutch abandons the gang's values, when he sacrifices members for his own benefit, when he becomes the thing he always claimed to oppose, at that point, loyalty to Dutch becomes betrayal of everything Dutch once stood for. Arthur's code evolves to recognize this. He remains loyal to the gang, to the people, to the principles, but not to the man who has abandoned them. This evolution represents moral growth, the development of practical wisdom. Arthur starts the game as a man who follows orders, who trusts Dutch's judgment over his own, who does what he's told because that's what loyalty requires. He ends the game as a man who thinks for himself, who judges situations on their merits, who acts according to his own moral compass rather than someone else's commands. This is maturity, the transition from dependent to independent moral agency. The theme of moral growth connects to Arthur's relationships with the younger members of the gang. Arthur functions as a mentor figure, whether he intends to or not. Lenny, Sean, even John, they look up to Arthur, learn from him, model themselves on him. Arthur's example shapes who they become. This is another dimension of masculine responsibility, the obligation to guide the next generation, to pass on wisdom, to help young men become good men. Arthur takes this responsibility seriously, even when he doesn't acknowledge it explicitly. His advice to John about family, about priorities, about what matters. This is mentorship, the transmission of hard-won wisdom from one generation to the next. Arthur knows he won't live to see John become the man he could be, but he plants seeds, offers guidance, tries to point John in the right direction. This is what fathers do, what older brothers do, what men do for the young men who follow them. The tragedy of Arthur's mentorship is that he learned from Dutch, and Dutch's lessons were mixed at best. Dutch taught Arthur to read, gave him a sense of purpose, showed him that outlaws could have honour. But Dutch also taught Arthur to follow without questioning, to trust charisma over judgment, to mistake grand rhetoric for genuine virtue. Arthur has to unlearn some of what Dutch taught him before he can teach John anything worth knowing. His mentorship is partly a correction of his own miseducation. This brings us to the question of fatherhood, which haunts Arthur throughout the game. Arthur had a son, Isaac, who was killed along with his mother by robbers. This loss is mentioned only briefly in an optional conversation that many players miss, but it's central to understanding Arthur's character. He knows what it means to be a father, knows the love and the responsibility and the vulnerability it entails. He also knows the devastation of losing a child, the guilt of not being there to protect them. Arthur's relationship with Jack Marston is coloured by this history. When Arthur takes Jack fishing, when he protects the boy from the violence of gang life, when he insists that John and Abigail get Jack away from all this, he's partly trying to give Jack what Isaac never had. He's also trying to be the father he failed to be, to do right by this child, even though he couldn't do right by his own. Jack represents a second chance, not for Arthur personally, but for the idea of fatherhood that Arthur carries within him. The fishing trip with Jack is one of the game's most tender moments. Arthur, this hardened outlaw, this killer of men, sits patiently by a river, teaching a young boy how to cast a line. He's gentle, encouraging, present in a way that his lifestyle rarely allows. For a few hours, he's not Arthur the enforcer, Arthur the gun. He's just a man spending time with a child, passing on simple skills, creating memories. It's a glimpse of the life Arthur might have had, the father he might have been. John's failures as a father are a recurring source of tension between him and Arthur. John abandoned Abigail and Jack for a year, running from the responsibilities of family. Arthur never lets him forget it. This isn't cruelty on Arthur's part, it's accountability. Arthur knows what John has, knows how precious it is, knows how easily it can be lost. He's furious that John would throw it away, would choose the outlaw life over his family, would repeat the mistakes that Arthur himself made with the Eliza and Isaac. Arthur's anger at John is really anger at himself, projected outward. Arthur couldn't protect his family. He wasn't there when they needed him. He chose the gang over them, and they paid the price. When he sees John making the same choice, he sees his own failure reflected back at him. His insistence that John do better is an insistence that someone, at least, learn from Arthur's mistakes. If Arthur can't redeem his own failures as a father, maybe he can help John avoid them. The theme of fatherhood extends to Arthur's relationship with Dutch. Dutch is in many ways Arthur's father figure. He raised Arthur from adolescence, shaped his values, gave him an identity. Arthur's loyalty to Dutch has the quality of filial devotion, the deep, almost instinctive attachment of a son to a father. This makes Dutch's betrayal all the more devastating. When Dutch abandons Arthur, he's not just abandoning a gang member, he's abandoning a son. The dissolution of Arthur's faith in Dutch is the emotional core of the game's final act. Arthur has to accept that his father figure is not the man he believed him to be, that the values Dutch espoused were rhetoric rather than conviction, that the family Dutch built was always, ultimately, about Dutch. This is a painful realization, the kind that can break a man. Arthur doesn't break. He grieves, he rages, he struggles, but he doesn't break. He finds new sources of meaning, new reasons to act, new principles to guide him. He becomes his own man, finally, in the shadow of his father's failure. This is another dimension of masculine development, the separation from the father, the establishment of independent identity. Boys become men partly by differentiating themselves from their fathers, by developing their own values and making their own choices. Arthur's journey is a delayed version of this process. He spent 20 years as Dutch's loyal son, following orders, trusting judgment, subordinating his own moral sense to Dutch's vision. Only at the end does he complete the separation. Does he become fully himself? The tragedy is that Arthur completes this development only when it's too late to benefit from it. He becomes the man he should have been just in time to die. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the game is suggesting that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be, that even a few weeks or days of living rightly are worth more than years of living wrongly. Arthur's final months are his best months. His death is his finest hour. The timing is tragic, but the achievement is real. Let's talk about Arthur's relationship with women, because masculinity is partly defined by how men relate to women. Arthur's interactions with the women in his life reveal a man who respects women as individuals, who doesn't reduce them to objects or stereotypes, who treats them with the same basic dignity he extends to men. This isn't performative feminism, it's simple decency, the recognition that women are people deserving of respect. Mary Linton is Arthur's great love, the woman he wanted to marry, the life he wanted to have. Their relationship failed because of who Arthur was, an outlaw, a criminal, someone Mary's family couldn't accept. Arthur carries this wound throughout the game, the knowledge that he lost the woman he loved because of choices he made. When Mary reappears asking for help, Arthur goes despite his better judgment. He still loves her. He probably always will. The Mary storyline is about the roads not taken, the lives we might have lived if we'd made different choices. Arthur could have left the gang for Mary. He could have gone straight, found honest work, built a normal life. He didn't, and now it's too late. Mary's final letter, returning his ring, closing the door forever, is one of the game's most emotionally devastating moments. Arthur reads it and says nothing. What is there to say? The chance is gone. It was always going to be gone. But Arthur's respect for women extends beyond romantic love. His interactions with Sadie Adler show a man who recognizes capability regardless of gender. Sadie is tough, capable, driven by grief and rage. Arthur doesn't condescend to her, doesn't try to protect her from danger she's chosen to face, doesn't treat her as less than an equal. He works alongside her, trusts her in combat, respects her choices even when he disagrees with them. Their partnership is one of the game's most compelling relationships. Abigail Marston is another important female figure in Arthur's life. Arthur cares about Abigail partly because she's John's partner, partly because she's Jack's mother, but also because she's a person worthy of care in her own right. When Arthur rescues Abigail from the Pinkertons, he's not doing it for John. John is presumed dead at that point. He's doing it because Abigail matters, because leaving her to be executed would be wrong, because protecting the vulnerable is what Arthur does. The women of the Vanderlyn gang, Tilly, Mary Beth, Karen, Susan Grimshaw, are all treated as full members of the community, not as accessories or dependents. They have their own personalities, their own stories, their own contributions to make. Arthur interacts with them as individuals, not as a category. This might seem like a low bar, but in the context of 1899, and in the context of many video games, it's notable. Arthur's masculinity doesn't require the diminishment of women. This respect for women connects to Arthur's broader moral framework. A man who mistreats women is not a man at all. He's a coward who picks on those he perceives as weaker. Arthur's code prohibits this kind of cowardice. When he encounters men who abuse women, and the game provides several such encounters, his response is immediate and violent. He protects women not because they're helpless, but because protecting the vulnerable is what strength is for. The theme of protection extends to children as well. Arthur's interactions with Jack Marston, with the street children of St. Denis, with the various young people he encounters throughout the game, all show a man who feels responsible for those who can't protect themselves. Children represent innocence, potential, the future. Arthur, who has done so much to darken the world, feels an obligation to preserve what light remains. His protection of children is an attempt at partial redemption, a way of balancing the scales even slightly. Let's talk about Arthur's sense of humour, because masculinity isn't all grimness and sacrifice. Arthur is genuinely funny, possessed of a dry wit that emerges in unexpected moments. His sarcasm, his deadpan delivery, his willingness to mock himself and others, these are part of what makes him human, what prevents him from becoming a one-dimensional tough guy. Humour is a coping mechanism, a way of dealing with the darkness of his life. But it's also an expression of intelligence and perspective. Arthur's humour often targets himself. He's quick to deflect compliments, to undercut any suggestion that he's a good man. "You're a good man, Arthur Morgan." "I don't know about that." This self-deprecation isn't false modesty. It's genuine uncertainty about his own worth. But it's also funny, the way Arthur consistently refuses to accept praise, the way he turns every compliment into a joke. His humour protects him from taking himself too seriously, from believing his own legend. The humour also serves a social function. Arthur uses jokes to diffuse tension, to build camaraderie, to connect with people who might otherwise be intimidated by him. His banter with other gang members, the teasing, the insults, the shared laughter, creates bonds that pure seriousness couldn't achieve. Men often communicate affection through mockery, and Arthur is fluent in this language. His jokes are expressions of love, even when they sound like insults. But Arthur's humour has limits. He doesn't joke about things that matter. He doesn't make light of death, of suffering, of the genuine struggles people face. His humour is a tool, not a shield against reality. When situations demand seriousness, Arthur is serious. The balance between humour and gravity is part of his emotional intelligence, his ability to read situations and respond appropriately. This emotional intelligence is another aspect of Arthur's masculinity that deserves attention. He's perceptive, attuned to the feelings of others, capable of reading situations that less observant men would miss. He notices when something is wrong with a gang member, when Dutch is lying, when a situation is about to go bad. This perception isn't passive, It informs his actions, helps him navigate complex social dynamics, makes him effective in ways that pure physical strength couldn't achieve. The journal is the clearest evidence of Arthur's inner life, but his emotional intelligence is visible in his interactions as well. He knows how to talk to people, how to put them at ease or intimidate them as the situation requires. He adjusts his approach based on who he's dealing with, gentle with the vulnerable, firm with the dangerous, patient with the confused. This adaptability is a form of strength, the ability to be what the moment requires. Arthur's emotional intelligence extends to self-awareness. He knows his own flaws, his own limitations, his own tendencies toward darkness. This self-knowledge is painful. Arthur doesn't like what he sees when he looks inward, but it's also valuable. A man who knows himself can work on himself, can try to be better, can avoid the self-deception that traps so many people in patterns of destructive behaviour. Arthur's self-awareness is the foundation of his moral growth. The question of self-improvement is central to Arthur's arc. Can a bad man become good? Can someone who has done terrible things find redemption? The game's answer, embodied in Arthur's journey, is a qualified yes. Arthur doesn't become a saint. He doesn't undo the harm he's caused, but he does change, does grow, does become better than he was. His final months show a man actively trying to do good, to help people, to leave the world slightly better than he found it. This is realistic redemption, not the fairy tale kind. Arthur can't erase his past. The people he killed are still dead. The families he destroyed are still destroyed. But he can choose differently going forward. He can use his remaining time to help rather than harm. He can die trying to save someone rather than trying to save himself. This is what redemption looks like in the real world, not the cancellation of past sins, but the commitment to future virtue. The religious dimension of Arthur's journey deserves attention. Arthur isn't religious in any conventional sense. He doesn't pray, doesn't attend church, doesn't profess belief in God. But his conversations with Sister Calderon and Reverend Swanson reveal spiritual searching, a desire for meaning that his outlaw life has never satisfied. When Sister Calderon tells him to take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act, she's offering him a path to redemption that doesn't require theological certainty. Arthur takes that gamble. He doesn't know if God exists, doesn't know if there's an afterlife, doesn't know if his final acts will matter in any cosmic sense. But he acts as if they matter, as if love is real, as if helping others has value. This is faith in action, even without faith in doctrine. Arthur's final choices are religious in the deepest sense. They're oriented toward transcendent values, toward goods that exceed his own survival and satisfaction. The game's ending, with Arthur watching the sunrise as he dies, is rich with religious symbolism. The sun rising in the east, the new day dawning, the light breaking through darkness. These images suggest hope, resurrection, the possibility of something beyond death. Arthur doesn't know what's coming, but he faces it with peace, having done what he could, having become who he was meant to be. His death is not defeat, it's completion. Let's return to the question we started with. What does it mean to be a man? Arthur Morgan's answer, embodied in his life and death, includes several elements. A man is strong, but his strength serves others. A man is loyal, but his loyalty is ordered toward the good. A man provides for those who depend on him. A man protects the vulnerable. A man has a code and lives by it. A man is willing to revise his code when it proves inadequate. A man faces death with courage. A man can be vulnerable without being weak. A man takes responsibility for his actions. A man tries to leave the world better than he found it. These aren't revolutionary ideas, they're traditional virtues, the kind that men have aspired to for centuries. But Red Dead Redemption 2 presents them with such depth, such nuance, such emotional power that they feel fresh, vital, urgent. In a cultural moment when masculinity is often either demonized or reduced to caricature, Arthur Morgan offers a vision of manhood that is genuinely admirable, flawed, struggling, imperfect, but striving towards something good. The game doesn't pretend that being a man is easy. Arthur's journey is full of failure, of compromise, of moral ambiguity. He does terrible things, he makes terrible choices, he hurts people who don't deserve it, but he also grows, learns, changes, he becomes better, and in the end, he gives everything he has for the people he loves. That's not a perfect life, but it's a meaningful one. Arthur Morgan matters because he shows us what masculine virtue can look like in practice. Not the shallow machismo of action heroes, not the toxic dominance of abusers, but something deeper and more human. Strength in service of others, loyalty ordered toward the good, vulnerability integrated with toughness, self-sacrifice as the highest expression of love. These are the qualities that make Arthur admirable, that make his story resonate, that make players care about a fictional outlaw in a video game. The cultural impact of Arthur Morgan suggests that people are hungry for this kind of masculine representation. The character has inspired countless discussions, analyses, tributes. Players form genuine emotional connections with Arthur, grieve his death, carry his story with them long after the credits roll. This response indicates that Arthur touches something real, something that people need and aren't finding elsewhere. He offers a model of manhood that is both aspirational and achievable. What can we learn from Arthur Morgan? Perhaps the most important lesson is that it's never too late to change. Arthur spends most of his life as a criminal, a killer, a man who has done terrible things. But in his final months facing death, he chooses differently. He chooses to help rather than harm, to give rather than take, to love rather than hate. His past doesn't determine his future, his choices do. This is a message of hope, and it's a message that applies to everyone, not just outlaws facing tuberculosis. We all have pasts, we all have regrets, we all have things we wish we'd done differently. But the past is past. What matters is what we do now, today, with whatever time we have left. Arthur's example suggests that even a lifetime of wrong choices can be followed by right ones, that redemption is possible for anyone willing to pursue it. The masculinity of Arthur Morgan is not about dominance or aggression or the accumulation of power. It's about service, sacrifice, protection, growth. It's about using strength for others rather than against them. It's about being loyal to what matters, not just to who commands. It's about facing death with courage and living with purpose. It's about trying, always trying, to be better than you were. In the end, Arthur Morgan dies on a mountainside, watching the sun rise, at peace with himself and his choices. He's given everything he has. He's helped the people he loves escape. He's faced his mortality with courage and his failures with honesty. He's become, finally, the man he was always capable of being. That's the masculinity of Arthur Morgan. That's what it means to be a man. Rest now, partner, you've earned it. The question of what makes a man has been debated for millennia, and every culture, every era, every philosophical tradition has offered its own answers. The ancient Greeks spoke of arete, excellence of character, the fulfillment of one's potential. The Romans valued virtues, courage and strength in service of the state. Medieval knights aspired to chivalry, the protection of the weak and the defense of honor. Each of these traditions emphasized different aspects of masculinity, but they shared a common thread: the belief that being a man meant more than simply being male. It meant living up to certain standards, embodying certain virtues, fulfilling certain obligations. Arthur Morgan, whether Rockstar intended it or not, stands in this tradition. He's not a philosopher, doesn't read ancient texts, probably couldn't define arete if you asked him, but he lives it. His actions throughout Red Dead Redemption 2 embody a vision of masculine excellence that would be recognizable to Aristotle, to Marcus Aurelius, to the Knights of Camelot. He's a man trying to be good in a world that makes goodness difficult, and that struggle is the essence of virtue. The Aristotelian concept of the golden mean is particularly relevant to understanding Arthur's character. Aristotle argued that virtue lies between extremes. Courage is the mean between cowardice and recklessness, generosity the mean between stinginess and prodigality. Arthur consistently finds these means, often without conscious effort. He's brave but not foolhardy, loyal but not blindly obedient, strong but not brutal. His character represents balance, the integration of qualities that lesser men possess only in excess or deficiency. Consider Arthur's relationship with violence. A coward would flee from necessary fights, leaving others to face danger alone. A reckless man would seek out violence for its own sake, endangering himself and others through unnecessary aggression. Arthur does neither. He fights when fighting is necessary, avoids conflict when avoidance is possible, and never seems to enjoy the killing even when it's justified. This is courage properly understood, not the absence of fear, but the mastery of fear in service of worthy goals. The same balance appears in Arthur's loyalty. Blind loyalty, the kind Dutch demands by the end of the game, is not a virtue but a vice. It subordinates moral judgment to personal attachment, making the loyal person complicit in whatever evils their leader commits. But disloyalty, the refusal to stand by those who have earned your commitment, is equally vicious. Arthur navigates between these extremes. He remains loyal to the gang, to the people, to the principles, but not to Dutch's increasingly deranged schemes. His loyalty is discriminating, directed toward what deserves loyalty rather than toward whoever demands it. The Stoic philosophers would recognize Arthur as one of their own, even though he's never heard of Stoicism. The Stoics taught that we should focus on what we can control, our own choices, our own character, and accept what we cannot control: external circumstances, other people's actions, the inevitability of death. Arthur's response to his tuberculosis diagnosis is profoundly Stoic. He doesn't rage against fate, doesn't waste his remaining time in despair, doesn't pretend the diagnosis isn't real. He accepts it, adjusts his priorities, and focuses on what he can still accomplish. This is Stoic wisdom in action. The Stoics also emphasize the importance of living according to nature, of fulfilling one's role in the cosmic order. For Arthur, this means accepting his role as protector, provider, the man others depend on. He doesn't choose this role, it's thrust upon him by circumstance and character, but he accepts it, fulfills it, finds meaning in it. His final months are spent ensuring that others can escape the fate he cannot avoid. This is living according to nature, accepting who you are and what you're called to do. The Christian tradition adds another dimension to Arthur's story. Christianity teaches that redemption is possible for everyone, that no sin is too great for God's forgiveness, that the worst sinner can become a saint through grace and repentance. Arthur's journey mirrors this teaching, even though he's not conventionally religious. He starts as a self-described bad man, acknowledges his sins, and gradually transforms into someone capable of genuine goodness. His final acts, helping John escape, facing death with peace, are acts of grace, unearned and undeserved but real nonetheless. Sister Calderon's advice to Arthur, take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act, is essentially Christian counsel, even though it doesn't mention God explicitly. It's an invitation to faith, to acting as if the universe is meaningful even when you can't prove it. Arthur takes this gamble. He doesn't know if his final acts matter in any cosmic sense, but he does them anyway, betting that love is real and that loving actions have value. This is faith without certainty, the kind of faith that actually requires courage. The concept of sacrifice is central to both Christianity and Arthur's story. Christ sacrificed himself for humanity. Arthur sacrifices himself for John and his family. The parallel isn't exact. Arthur is no messiah, but the structure is similar. Both involve giving up one's life so that others might live. Both involve choosing death when survival was possible. Both represent the ultimate expression of love, the willingness to pay the highest price for the good of others. Arthur's sacrifice is particularly meaningful because it's not required. He could have tried to escape with John. He could have focused on his own survival, squeezed out a few more weeks of life. Instead, he chooses to stay behind, to hold off the pursuers, to ensure that John gets away. This choice transforms his death from mere tragedy into something approaching triumph. He dies on his own terms for his own reasons, in service of people he loves. That's not defeat, that's victory. The theme of legacy runs throughout Arthur's final hours. He knows he's going to die, knows he won't see the future he's helping to create, but he acts anyway, because the future matters even if he won't be part of it. His legacy is John's survival, Jack's chance at a normal life, the possibility that something good can come from all the violence and chaos. Arthur plants seeds he'll never see grow, and that's enough. That has to be enough. This orientation toward the future is another aspect of mature masculinity. Young men often live in the present, focused on immediate gratification, unable to see beyond their own lifespans. Mature men think about legacy, about what they'll leave behind, about the world their children and grandchildren will inherit. Arthur's final months show this maturity. He's not thinking about himself anymore. He's thinking about John, about Jack, about the future that will exist after he's gone. The contrast with Dutch is instructive here. Dutch talks constantly about the future, Tahiti, mangoes, one more score, but his vision of the future is really about himself. He wants to escape, to live comfortably, to prove that he was right all along. The people around him are means to this end, not ends in themselves. When Dutch's plans fail, he has nothing left, because his plans were always about Dutch. Arthur's vision of the future is different. It's about other people, about their flourishing, about goods that transcend his own existence. This is why Arthur can face death with peace, while Dutch descends into madness. Let's examine Arthur's relationship with work. because masculinity has always been connected to productive labour. Arthur works constantly throughout the game. He hunts, he robs, he does odd jobs, he contributes to the camp. This work isn't glamorous. Much of it is tedious, repetitive, even degrading. But Arthur does it because it needs to be done, because people are depending on him, because a man provides for those in his care. The dignity of work is a theme that runs through many masculine traditions. Work gives purpose, creates value, connects us to others through exchange and cooperation. A man who doesn't work, who takes without giving, who consumes without producing, is diminished, incomplete. Uncle represents this failure in the game. He's capable of work but refuses to do it, preferring to lounge around camp while others provide for him. Arthur's contempt for Uncle is really contempt for this refusal of masculine responsibility. But Arthur's relationship with work is complicated by the nature of his work. He's an outlaw. His job involves robbery, violence, activities that harm others. How do we reconcile the dignity of work with the immorality of Arthur's profession? The game doesn't offer easy answers, but it suggests that even within an immoral profession, there are better and worse ways to operate. Arthur tries to rob from those who can afford it, to avoid unnecessary violence, to maintain some semblance of honour even in dishonourable work. He's not innocent, but he's not as guilty as he could be. The game also shows Arthur doing legitimate work, hunting, fishing, helping strangers with their problems. These activities provide an alternative vision of what Arthur's life could have been, what his work could have looked like if he'd made different choices. The hunting and fishing mechanics aren't just gameplay padding, they're glimpses of a different Arthur, one who provides through honest labour rather than theft. The tragedy is that this Arthur never fully emerged, that the outlaw life claimed him before he could become something else. Arthur's craftsmanship deserves attention as well. He's skilled with his hands, not just with guns, but with practical tasks. He can skin an animal, cook a meal, set up a camp, maintain his equipment. These skills represent a kind of competence that's increasingly rare in the modern world, where specialization means most people can't do much outside their narrow expertise. Arthur is a generalist, capable of handling whatever the frontier throws at him. This competence is part of his masculine appeal. The journal reveals another dimension of Arthur's craftsmanship, his artistic ability. Arthur draws, and he draws well. His sketches of landscapes, animals, and people show genuine talent, an eye for detail and composition. This artistic side of Arthur is unexpected. We don't typically associate outlaws with artistic sensitivity, but it's consistent with his character. Arthur notices things, appreciates beauty, has an inner life that his rough exterior conceals. The journal drawings are windows into this inner life, evidence that Arthur is more than just a gun. The integration of toughness and sensitivity in Arthur's character is one of the game's most important achievements. Contemporary culture often presents these as opposites. You can be a tough guy or a sensitive artist, but not both. Arthur proves this false. He's the toughest man in the gang and also the most artistically inclined. He can kill 12 men and then sit quietly sketching a flower. These aren't contradictions, they're complements. True strength includes the strength to appreciate beauty, to feel deeply, to express oneself creatively. This integration challenges toxic masculinity, the belief that men must suppress all emotion except anger, must never show vulnerability, must dominate rather than cooperate. Arthur is not toxically masculine. He feels things deeply and doesn't hide it. He cries when friends die. He expresses affection for the people he cares about. He admits when he's wrong, apologizes when he's hurt someone, shows vulnerability to those he trusts. None of this makes him less of a man. It makes him more of one. The game's portrayal of Arthur's emotions is remarkably nuanced for a video game protagonist. We see him angry, sad, afraid, hopeful, despairing, peaceful. We see him struggle with guilt, wrestle with doubt, search for meaning. We see him laugh and cry, rage and grieve. This emotional range makes Arthur feel real in a way that most game characters don't. He's not a power fantasy or a blank slate for player projection. He's a person with all the complexity that personhood entails. Arthur's emotional honesty is particularly evident in his interactions with other characters. He doesn't perform emotions he doesn't feel, doesn't pretend to be okay when he's not, doesn't hide behind a mask of invulnerability. When Mary asks how he's doing, he tells her the truth. When Sister Calderon asks about his fears, he admits them. This honesty is a form of courage. It takes bravery to be vulnerable, to let others see your weaknesses, to risk rejection by showing your true self. The theme of authenticity connects to Arthur's journey towards self-knowledge. Throughout the game, Arthur is learning who he really is, what he really values, what kind of man he wants to be. This process of self-discovery is painful. Arthur doesn't like much of what he finds when he looks inward, but it's necessary for growth. You can't become better if you don't know what you're starting from. Arthur's self-knowledge, hard-won and often unwelcome, is the foundation of his transformation. The game's honor system reflects this journey towards self-knowledge. High honor Arthur and low honor Arthur are different people, making different choices, becoming different men. The honor system isn't just a gameplay mechanic, it's a representation of moral development, of the cumulative effect of choices on character. Every decision Arthur makes shapes who he becomes. The player, guiding these decisions, participates in Arthur's moral formation. Most players choose high honor, and this choice reveals something about what people want from masculine characters. We want Arthur to be good. We want him to help strangers, to show mercy, to choose love over hate. We want him to become the man he's capable of being, not the man his circumstances have made him. This desire for Arthur's goodness reflects our own desire for goodness, our own hope that we can become better than we are. The high honor ending, with Arthur watching the sunrise as he dies, is the ending most players experience, and the ending that feels right. It's the culmination of Arthur's journey, the moment when all his growth and struggle pays off. He dies at peace, having done what he could, having become who he was meant to be. The sunrise symbolizes hope, new beginnings, the possibility of redemption. Arthur won't see the new day, but he's helped make it possible for others. The low honor ending, by contrast, shows Arthur dying alone, unmourned, having failed to grow or change. This ending is tragic in a different way. Not the tragedy of a good man dying too soon, but the tragedy of a man who never became good at all. The low honor ending is a warning, a reminder that growth isn't automatic, that we can choose to remain stuck in our worst selves. Arthur's potential for goodness is always there, but it has to be actualized through choice. The existence of both endings underscores the game's central message about masculinity. It's a choice. Being a good man isn't something that happens to you. It's something you do, repeatedly, through countless small decisions. Arthur becomes a good man by choosing to be one, by acting with honour even when dishonour would be easier. The player participates in this choice, making it feel personal, making Arthur's growth feel like our own. Let's talk about Arthur's relationship with nature, because masculinity has always been connected to the natural world. Arthur is at home in the wilderness in a way that few modern people can understand. He can track animals, read weather, navigate by stars. He knows which plants are edible, which animals are dangerous, which streams are safe to drink from. This knowledge isn't academic, it's practical, earned through years of living close to the land. The hunting and fishing mechanics in Red Dead Redemption 2 aren't just gameplay features, they're expressions of Arthur's relationship with nature. When Arthur hunts, he's participating in an activity that men have done for hundreds of thousands of years. He's connecting with something primal, something that predates civilization, something that speaks to deep masculine instincts. The satisfaction of a successful hunt, tracking the animal, making the shot, harvesting the meat, is a satisfaction that modern life rarely provides. But Arthur's relationship with nature isn't purely exploitative. He appreciates the beauty of the wilderness, sketches landscapes in his journal, comments on sunsets and mountain vistas. He's not just taking from nature, he's also receiving from it, finding peace and meaning in the natural world that the human world often denies him. The wilderness is Arthur's church, the place where he feels most himself, most connected to something larger than his own concerns. The game's environmental storytelling reinforces this connection. The world of Red Dead Redemption 2 is stunningly beautiful, full of details that reward attention and exploration. Players who take time to appreciate this world, to watch the sunrise, to listen to the wildlife, to simply exist in the virtual wilderness, are participating in Arthur's experience of nature. The game invites us to slow down, to notice, to appreciate. This is countercultural in a gaming landscape dominated by constant action and stimulation. Arthur's connection to nature contrasts with the encroaching civilization that threatens the frontier. The railroads, the cities, the industrialization. These represent a world where men like Arthur have no place. The game is elegiac, mourning the loss of the wild, the end of an era when a man could live free on the land. Arthur knows this world is ending, knows he's part of the last generation to experience it. His relationship with nature is tinged with grief, the knowledge that what he loves is being destroyed. This grief connects to broader themes of loss and change that run throughout the game. Arthur loses friends, loses love, loses his health, loses his faith in Dutch. The world he knew is disappearing, replaced by something alien and hostile. His response to these losses, not denial, not rage, but acceptance and adaptation, is another aspect of his masculine maturity. He doesn't pretend things aren't changing. He doesn't waste energy fighting the inevitable. He focuses on what he can still do, what he can still save, what he can still give. The theme of adaptation is crucial to understanding Arthur's character. He's not rigid, not stuck in his ways, not unable to change. When circumstances demand it, he adapts. When his code proves inadequate, he revises it. When his loyalty to Dutch becomes implicity in evil, he redirects that loyalty toward better ends. This flexibility is a form of strength, the strength to admit you were wrong, to change course, to become something new. Rigid men break under pressure, flexible men bend and survive. Arthur's adaptability is tested most severely by his diagnosis. Learning you're dying forces a kind of adaptation that nothing else can match. Everything you thought mattered suddenly doesn't. Everything you postponed suddenly can't wait. Arthur's response to this test is remarkable. He doesn't collapse into despair or denial. He adapts, refocuses, finds new purpose. His final months are his most purposeful, his most directed, his most meaningful. The diagnosis doesn't destroy him, it clarifies him. This capacity for growth under pressure is perhaps the most important aspect of Arthur's masculinity. Life will test us all. We will face losses, failures, betrayals, mortality. The question is how we respond. Do we break or do we grow? Do we become bitter or do we become better? Arthur's example suggests that even the worst circumstances can be occasions for growth, that suffering can be transformed into wisdom, that death can be faced with dignity and even grace. The game's epilogue, playing as John Marston, reinforces Arthur's legacy. John is alive because of Arthur. John's family is together because of Arthur. John's chance at a normal life exists because Arthur gave his life to make it possible. When John builds his ranch, when he plays with Jack, when he holds Abigail, all of this is Arthur's gift, the fruit of his sacrifice. Arthur's masculinity lives on through the people he saved. John's own journey in the epilogue mirrors Arthur's in some ways. He's trying to go straight, to leave the outlaw life behind, to become a better man. He struggles with the same tensions Arthur faced. Loyalty versus principle, past versus future, who he was versus who he wants to be. John's success, partial and temporary though it proves to be, is a testament to Arthur's influence. Arthur showed John what was possible. John is trying to live up to that example. The tragedy of John's eventual fate, hunted down and killed by the government in Red Dead Redemption 1, doesn't negate Arthur's sacrifice. Arthur gave John a chance. What John did with that chance was John's responsibility. Arthur couldn't guarantee John's future. He could only make it possible. The fact that John eventually fails doesn't mean Arthur's sacrifice was meaningless. It means that redemption is hard, that the past has consequences, that even the best intentions can't always overcome the weight of history. But before that tragic end, John has years of peace. He has time with his family, time to watch Jack grow, time to build something legitimate. These years are Arthur's gift. They're what Arthur died for, and they matter even if they don't last forever. Nothing lasts forever. What matters is what we do with the time we have. This is the final lesson of Arthur Morgan's masculinity. Make the time count. We don't know how much time we have. We don't know when the diagnosis will come, when the bullet will find us, when our luck will run out. All we can do is use the time we have well, to love the people we love, to do the work that matters, to become the men we're capable of being. Arthur's example shows us what this looks like in practice. His life, flawed and violent and ultimately cut short, was nonetheless meaningful. He made it count. The masculinity of Arthur Morgan is not a set of rules to follow or a checklist to complete. It's a way of being in the world, a orientation toward life that prioritizes service over selfishness, growth over stagnation, love over fear. It's the recognition that being a man means more than being male, that masculinity is an achievement rather than a given, that the title of good man must be earned through action rather than claimed through assertion. Arthur earns that title. Not perfectly, not completely, but genuinely. He becomes a good man in the end, or at least a better man than he was. His journey shows us that such becoming is possible, that we're not prisoners of our pasts, that redemption is available to anyone willing to pursue it. This is the hope that Arthur Morgan offers, not the hope of easy transformation, but the hope of difficult, painful, worthwhile growth. That's the masculinity of Arthur Morgan. That's what it means to be a man. In the end, Arthur Morgan dies on a mountainside, watching the sun rise, at peace with himself and his choices. He's given everything he has. He's helped the people he loves escape. He's faced his mortality with courage and his failures with honesty. He's become, finally, the man he was always capable of being. Years after the game's release, people still talk about him, still care about him, still carry his story with them. Arthur Morgan touched something real, something that people need, something that our culture often fails to provide. He showed us what masculine virtue can look like. Not the shallow machismo of action heroes, not the toxic dominance of abusers, but something deeper and more human. Strength in service of others, loyalty ordered toward the good, vulnerability integrated with toughness, self-sacrifice as the highest expression of love. That's the legacy Arthur leaves. That's the challenge he offers to every man who encounters his story. Rest now, partner. You've earned it.